Now it's time for today's perspective. And if you think of the axes of the world, the big border lines, you might think of migratory routes like through Africa into Europe or through the Americas. You might think of trade routes like the Silk Road, or you might even think of the route into space. Well, it is all of these axes of humanity, if you like, and of our geopolitics that are covered in a new book by my guest today. Here it is, Du monde à l'autre, or From One World to Another, if you like. General Dominique Trinquand, you may recognise as a regular commentator here on France 24. He commanded actually a battalion in Lebanon in the early 90s and in the former Yugoslavia. He's held a number of other senior positions with NATO, the EU and the UN, including former head of the French military mission to the UN. Great to have you with us to talk about something that you've done rather than you commenting on other events, as it were. Tell us first of all about what the aim of the book is.
The aim is just to show that the world is changing and we no longer have to look back and, fantasy about what was the past and all that. We need to understand what is the present in order to build the future. I'm quoting at the end of the book Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is saying that the future, we don't have to dream about it, we just have to build on the present. And that's the aim of the book, yeah.
I mentioned a bit about your history before. I mean, you're obviously a military man. I assume the idea of it, did it come from the military angle and then you broadened it out?
Yeah, exactly. But not only military, I've been at the UN Security Council 3 times, in fact, altogether between 1999 and 28, in fact. And when you are here, you look at the world, not only in military perspective, but in all perspective. So in the book, for example, we were talking about the axis. I'm talking about migration. I'm talking about drugs, but I'm talking also about the commerce. The Red Sea problem, the current Red Sea problem, and of course about the crisis in Africa, Sahel, but also in Ukraine and Russia, and also in Middle East with Israel, Gaza, and Iran. So I'm talking at the end also about the new way of fighting war, which is cyber security, which is communication, information, in fact. And all this satellite, for example, we are now talking about the Iris constellation for European. And we have also the need to be more advanced in all the system in order for Europe to be more autonomous. We are talking about the American election, of course. And very often I'm saying Europeans shouldn't wait every 4 years for the votes of 20,000 Americans. We need to be autonomous on that side of the Atlantic.
That's certainly something Emmanuel Macron picked up on and was criticised for, wasn't he, quite strongly 6 months, a year ago, I guess, where he said that, we can't just rely on the US. And that's something you draw out in the book?
Yes, exactly. And when we are looking at this election, the American election, very often I say, I don't like Mr. Trump. But I think if Mr. Trump is winning, this will be a good thing for Europeans. It will be, I would say, un coup de pied aux fesses in French, which will...
Bit of a kick up, though.
A kick up, exactly. Yeah. and then realize, when he was president 5 years ago, lots of Europeans suddenly realized, Article 5 of NATO, will it apply for us or not? And so I think it will be a good thing, even if it will increase the disorder in the current world.
Yeah, I mean, you're very used to coming on here, for example, and talking about some of the military angles, some of the geopolitical angles. Some of the other angles, perhaps, is something a little bit that, that we're not used to you talking about. For example, migration.
Yes, migration, because I think that for Europeans, for example, but for the US, it's the same thing. We are in Europe a sort of paradise for countries which are in the south. They've got difficulty. Mainly in Africa, where the demography is increasing. I mean, doubling the number of people in a country within 30 years. So they can't cope with that. So the people will want to migrate. And we've got to control that, because we are ages countries. And so we need these people but we need to control it in order to see what we need really in terms of migration. And the second point is that the people who are coming in our countries need to integrate this country, really. In France, we've got what we call the laic system, where you can be Muslim, you can be Christian, but keep that in your home. And for the rest, just apply the rules of the Republic. And I think it's a good way of integrating people. But we must be very strong in that terms.
Yeah, it's important you feel to be quite strict on it, yeah.
Yeah.
What about, you mentioned at the beginning they're looking forward to the future, and you mentioned briefly cybersecurity as well. What are the main areas you think we need to be turning towards? I mean, there's cybersecurity, there's also space, presumably, as well.
The first thing is artificial intelligence. It's going very fast. I mean, 3 years ago, people were talking, we've got time to look after that. No, it's there. And we need to be very careful. So we've got two ways of being careful. The first way is a personal way, is the problem of education. To understand that what you've seen is not always the truth. You need to be suspicious about all what is seen on the cyber. Second point is regulation. The Europeans were the first one, for the first time, to be ahead of that and to have regulation on that. And I think it's a good thing to protect the individuals with the cyber. But I'm going back to education. Very often, why fake news are achieving their aim is because people are taking for granted everything what they are seeing. If you've got the education, the background, you can be more suspicious about what you're seeing.
Just finally, how do you link all these things together? Is there a way of concluding the book, if you like, with a message, I suppose?
Yeah, the message is that the world we've been for the last 70 years is finished. We've got to build another world. And we need for that to be very firm on our culture, on the way. I'm not talking for the European. The fact that Europe is a marvelous place where after a century of fighting each other, now we are at peace. And we need to understand that this is not for granted. You have to fight for that.
General Dominique Trinquand, thanks very much for coming in and talking to us once again. As I say, the book is D'un monde à l'autre, not available in English at the moment, but if you know someone who speaks French or you speak French yourself, you know all about it now. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us on the programme today.